people here today.
All right, welcome everybody to our Planning Commission meeting this evening, the first one of the year, exciting. Let's go ahead and get started. We will start with a Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we're going to turn the time over to Commissioner Wright for a thought and a prayer.
Yes, I love this quote, and it's perfect going along with this time of year as we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I do feel like a lot of times we share quotes that Martin Luther King Jr. gave because they're amazing, and then we sort of like pat ourselves on the back and then we walk away. But I think it's important that when we share these quotes, we think about what it is that causes us to change or what action we can take to actually implement what is being said. So I would encourage you to think about that as I read this quote. Every society has its protectors of the status quo and its fraternities of the indifferent, who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions. Today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change. I think I love this. It's not one that you hear often from him, but it's really important because I think when we consider what's happening in society, whether it's in little old Centerville, whether it's in our elementary schools or high schools or neighborhoods or wherever we are, we need to face the challenge of change and recognize where we could be indifferent and be hurting progress, but also be hurting people in that indifference. And so I would encourage us to just think through again what we can do to remain vigilant there, and I will say a quick prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this day, for the opportunity to serve on Planning Commission and to come together. We pray that we will have the spirit of safety over those who are working in our city to keep us safe. We pray for wisdom and understanding in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, let's get rolling then on the agenda. The first item on the agenda is always the most anxiously awaited every year. We're going to elect a chair and a vice chair. It is a one-year position, I guess you could say. So,
and before we do that, I just wanted to let everyone know, I just recently spoke with the mayor. I am going to have to resign in the next little bit. I have some scheduling things that are going to keep me busy on Wednesday nights. So unfortunately, oh, and there he is, mayor himself. So unfortunately, I've said that I will stay until my place is filled, but just so everyone's aware, I am not seeking re-election for vice chair. So.
And also, this is my last time too. So
Oh, what?
my term's up, so I'm not going to.
you can stay until your replacement is in place.
Well, I have something else on just for 5 weeks. I can do it after the 5 weeks.
Oh, okay. Well,
I could, but I
That's fine.
can't.
Anyone else saying anything? You're going to stay on?
who else has a bombshell?
Who else,
I
who else,
know,
is everybody
what?
leaving?
I thought we had so much fun.
We did, and it makes me sad to go. I actually have stayed on, past my term and wanted to continue. And I was really looking forward to potentially working on the general plan together. And I thought that was going to be really fun, and I'm sad to leave, but yes.
We do have some occasional that are open to public that you can come and participate.
There you
if you'd
go,
like to.
yeah.
Well, all of our meetings are open to the public, but,
Great point.
so,
Particular items.
Yes.
anyway. Okay, well, that being
We
said.
can keep it in memory of Becky and say, she would really be interested. We'll just send you a personal invite.
There you go. Okay, then, with that being said, what we will do then is let's go ahead and open up nominations for chair. We will elect a chair, and then after that, we can elect a vice chair. Kind of, we'll do the one and then the other, so.
I nominate Matt as chair.
Well, there aren't that many left. Kind of a lowest common denominator thing.
I think he would do a good job keeping us on track and doesn't have any impending reason to leave this body, so
Now he does.
I think you do a great job.
Thank you.
Does
I
someone have to
nominate-
second that,
I'd like
or
to
no?
second that nomination.
Because I don't know if it has to be.
Is that how we work?
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
so, sure.
Having said that, I nominate Heidi as chair.
There you go.
She's been a great team player on
I
this.
second that.
I reject it.
And has also not said she's leaving.
Okay,
Great.
anybody else?
I second on that one.
Okay. Well then, let's go ahead and close the nominations. Lisa has our ballots, which,
Very official.
very official ballots. Basically, what we're going to do is, if you just write down your
Do you
vote.
take two ballots?
Yeah, take two,
Yeah.
Two.
chair and vice chair, so we'll just do chair first. I have an extra pen.
I'm gonna have to borrow a pen, thank you.
Write down your choice for chair, and then pass it down this way, and Lisa will tally them.
That's okay.
Although I have to double
And
check.
that is it.
I might put it down in the wrong place and look, Mackenzie was.
I've been a tallier.
Do both? Just do one.
Let's do chair.
Just do it, oh, we're just doing chair right now.
Yeah, just do.
There's
Here's
the
some
chair.
extra.
Right, Heidi or Matt?
Extra papers. Yeah, the chair.
Yeah.
That's the chair.
Very sophisticated system.
Extra papers because she didn't need them.
Oh,
I thought you
no,
needed
those
one.
are the extras.
Well, we really
On
need
the
a
handy-
hat
oh,
to draw.
Yeah.
These are extras.
Oh, okay, okay. One,
You have
two,
6?
3, 4,
Hold on.
5.
I'll take it.
There we go.
I don't want anyone tapping with my phone.
You don't want,
6.
what's it called, ballot,
Tampering.
Tampering.
no.
Or any intimidation.
There might be some hanging chads.
What's the
if
gathering
you-
thing, ballot,
Stuffing, box stuffing. is
where
that
you
weird?
gather ballots, what's it called?
Okay, well, while she's looking that up, okay. We have one vote for Matt. Confirmed.
Harvesting, ballot harvesting.
Harvesting, oh yeah. One vote for Heidi.
Oh, it's neck and neck.
One vote for Matt. It was enthusiastic.
Waiting for
we'll
Heidi
leave it
to
at
break the
that.
tie.
Another one for Matt. Another one for Heidi.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
in a runoff election?
Heidi. Oh my, this has never happened.
Coin toss?
No, I just acquiesce and you can win.
Well, one of them did have 3 votes for Matt.
See?
I don't know that
It said 3 votes for Matt?
Yes, it did.
I didn't know that was an option.
You get a vote again? You gotta go do, I think we had to vote again
Do we have to
one
vote
time.
again, unless she,
Okay.
do you want to withdraw?
Vote again.
No.
Will this be 16 rounds?
Oh, yeah.
Let's not set it.
We're gonna stay all night here.
All right, this is what we did last time. We
Yeah.
said, I think we decided we let someone say something about either why they think the other person would be a good job or like what they think they could bring. So maybe like a little bit of
So we'll have a little bit of a
campaigning.
speech and then
Yeah.
a revote. And if you could, while they're doing the speeches, just rip it in half, so we'll have.
Good,
left.
we're running out of paper.
I
Okay.
don't think you should vote for me. I think you should vote for Matt.
I know, tell me why.
Because
Why?
Matt is so dependable. And Matt has a very good perspective of what's going on here. I'm clueless. Don't vote for me. Vote for Matt.
All right, Matt, let's hear it.
I don't see any reason Heidi wouldn't do an excellent.
No, no, no.
She's, when you say dependable, you're here regularly, as am I, so, and have been on the committee longer than me. Have a good sense of how it all works. I think Heidi would do a great job. I'm willing, I'm not opposed to it, so I'll leave it at that.
See that? That's good.
We're making progress.
I'm voting right now.
Okay, sounds good. Let's vote second round for our chair.
Okay.
All right, I'm for it, thank you.
The next one, the mayor breaks a tie.
Mayor breaks the tie next one. If it's a tie.
We have to,
One more.
One more.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You were faster that time. Okay. We still have one for Heidi.
She voted for herself,
If only.
just to mess it up.
Heidi,
Oh,
Matt. Matt. These were lumped in. Matt is cool. And Heidi.
there you go.
all right, Mayor.
So convincing with
Debbie.
my speech.
Okay.
Can't you tell that I shouldn't be elected?
Wow.
Methinks she doth protest too much.
Well,
If anybody's inclined to change their vote, we could do that one more time, or
And you won't even hurt my
we can
feelings.
have someone pick one of these.
Oh, there you go.
Pick one at random, you mean?
Why don't you have,
What do you
Put
guys
them all
want to do?
three in a hat and
It's
draw?
up to you, you know, I'm sure there's other
All
options.
6 in a hat.
oh, put
and
all
draw.
6 in a hat and
And
draw.
draw.
well, it's the same,
Oh.
right? 50-50, but
But still.
That's
kinda-
true.
Or you could just put 2 and a half.
doesn't matter. Either way.
Or take Kevin's straw and cut it in unequal sections. Both.
What do you guys want to do? Really,
You'd
you're,
have
Rock,
Kevin
paper,
just be
scissors?
reelected.
yeah, do that, yeah,
I
go with
wish I
that.
didn't come.
Let's do a rock, paper, scissors.
What did you say, rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah, go do it.
That's 2 out of 3.
Is that better than drawing lots? Yeah,
Arm wrestle, I mean,
Flip a coin.
I say.
Well, okay, let's
Kev-
have- let's
Kevin,
have-
just go pick one. With my idea.
do you want me to pick one?
Well, let's have someone not on the commission. Let's have
Oh, well.
Lisa or someone.
So they can be blamed. Whitney, do you want to be
I
blamed?
don't want this responsibility.
Lisa, you pick from Whitney's hand.
you want to push the button that we need.
What, pick from one of these?
Yeah, take one of each, give it to Whitney,
Here, just hand me all 6.
One of you.
or all 6, and then you pick.
Pick 2?
I wouldn't do it if I was.
What did you
I
say?
think Kevin
Do it if
She
I
said she's excited.
She's excited.
Come on.
We're
pick,
gonna
pick,
put
pick.
him in front of Kevin. He can do that.
This is getting really intense.
Close your eyes.
We have a job to protect. I don't want to be involved in any controversy.
That's the
Oh,
one
this
right
is the
there.
one. What is it?
It says Heidi.
Heidi, it is. So then by virtue, should we,
Well, yeah, I was going to say, unless somebody feels strongly about running for vice chair, I would nominate Matt to be the vice chair and
I second that.
close the nomination?
Yeah. Second that.
Okay. Then, having only one, then I would say.
Favor?
All in favor of Matt as our vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Great. healthy
Congratulations,
debate.
Heidi.
Heidi, you'll do great.
She just asked me if she's got a lot of sick time built up.
Big time.
I've got definitely 16 hours of PTO.
You built up some PTO time. Okay, well, should we just proceed and then we can
Yeah.
do some seat changing later? Is that okay?
If the chair's okay.
Oh, wait, yeah. Do we usually change right now?
We've done it both ways, I think.
Makes it easier to prepare for a meeting.
Okay. All right, let's move on then. Let's keep going.
In shock.
Heidi is stunned over there.
I might never come again. And then the vice chair's gonna have to just run every show.
There you go.
Don't put it past me.
That is an idea.
Your term is up in November.
Oh, but
Oh, there you go.
that can be
It's
arranged.
almost a year away.
Yeah. we're
Yeah, it
good.
sounds like a 2024 problem.
Okay, the next item on our agenda has been scheduled for a public hearing. This is a general plan amendment to the moderate income housing section, and we will turn the time over to Corey.
Thank you, Chair and members of the commission. As you recall at your last meeting, we noticed it for a public hearing, and we continued that public hearing because all of the language for the strategies had not been prepared. And so the meeting has officially been continued to tonight, so you'll need to conduct that hearing and then make your debate and conclusion afterwards. At the direction of the commission, the staff was instructed to go back to the strategies that were originally proposed, look at some of the costs and intensities that are associated with it, pare some of the strategies down, because we picked 5, but then there were subcategories to the 5, so we had actually more than 5. And so the question is hitting the magic number of 3, which is the minimum state requirement, and whether we wanted to go to a 5 strategy situation based on you would get preferential treatment in a competing project. If all things were being equal, then those who picked 5 would get the preferential treatment. So staff went back, looked at a number of the strategies, continued to consult with Department of Workforce Services personnel, and we came up with 5. It seemed that would be a good, appropriate place to still maintain that we were going to do 5, but we really shifted the priorities around. As you recall, in the original one, we had a beyond the scope of the jurisdiction where we would explore a lot of other joint projects and other entities for development, and had a single one for our local control, which was our mortgage assistance program. We've kind of top-ended that, and we kept 2 with working with interagencies. So you have 2 of them that are looking at what can we do with surrounding communities, what can we do with Davis County, some of those factors that we could maybe pool some resources, but there was still this exploratory avenue associated with those. So coming up with benchmarks was part of the discussion. And then we added 3 local, and 2 of them are pretty dependent on each other. And so in looking back also to the idea of the plan is to have a 5-year vision. And so to hit those benchmarks, they were really looking for, what are you going to do this year? What are you going to do next year? What are you going to do the following year? And one of my concerns about that is, one, just everything being done in 1 year, or everything done in 3 years, and then we'll have a big question mark on what we do next if things fail or succeed. The other thing was the reporting aspect of not overloading the commission or the council with the work and staff in that reporting period, because we have to report each year on our efforts. It's going to be more like they talked about an essay. You're really having to explain what you tried to do and whether it worked or didn't work and why and what could be changed at a state level or whatever the responses you experienced. And so as I looked at it, I started trying to take that 5 years and said, we're not going to divvy it up and we're going to work on all 5 every year. And so you see a real shift in the strategies with the benchmarks saying, we'll do this for a couple of years, then we may add this one in, and by the end of year 5, we're going to add this final one in. So basically, it's just taking 2, looking outside of Centerville and how we can partnership with development, and that is the one where we're still doing a lot of exploring and research, but we have benchmarks assigned with that exploring and research associated with it. And then if something can come to fruition by the time we hit example year 3, we can maybe begin to look and solicit a joint opportunity. And so that's how we set up those benchmarks. The local ones, we kept the mortgage assistance and then divided that up into, okay, we're going to look at the housing, we're going to then look at our budget, and then we're going to look at, where does that sit? And then if we got a program, look at other cities or examples of a program and see if we can put a program together. And then the last fifth year would be expanding it beyond just local city employees, whether we consider it to county and state or other jurisdictions' employees too. And so that's how that ended up stretched to 5 years. The other one I went back to, it was briefly mentioned at the commission level, and it was briefly mentioned by staff out of a little bit of frustration. There were jurisdictions that are picking the ADU, and we've already done the ADU. In fact, every jurisdiction technically should have done the internal ADU. And what I didn't realize in the language is I kept reading it with a bias, always with the internal ADU, and we've already adopted that. But there's an opportunity that was in the last strategy that's picked is to look at external ADUs, which is not mandatory under state law. And so what I thought we'd do is let's do what the state wanted. Evaluate the use of the internal ADU, see how that plays out. I think, Whitney, we have now 7, are we up to 7 internal ADUs officially adopted? This year's been the most that we've occurred. And so I think we let that internal ADU see where that plays out. I suspect it's not going to be widespread per se, but given the housing and changes, maybe it will increase in the next few years. I know that there's some reservation about the detached ADUs, at least in past discussions. Even the commission, some of the past commission members were uncomfortable with the detached system. Probably a little bit of that visual, occupying the backyard, where does the parking happen, so forth. So there's been some uncomfortable, but that's maybe something we can consider. And so as we evaluate the ADUs, their success, seeing what the public is willing to tolerate, that temperature measurement that you kind of look at your community, and if there's some interest of detached, I think there's some advantage of the detached versus the internal ones, but it comes with a whole different set of concerns that are associated with it.
So you're saying adding that as an option because we didn't have the detached?
Because we didn't have the detached, so maybe on year 4, we look at a detached consideration.
Yeah.
And then year 5, if we consider that that's a venue we want to pursue, then we can use that one strategy in state that talks about detached and letting the impact fees be eliminated from that. So there's no guarantee that we'll do detached. We'll just evaluate it for 3 years, look at it year 4, and if we decide to go that direction, year 5 would be making sure we adopt something and exempt it from the impact fees. And the idea is to try to reduce the costs of construction. Now, separate construction is going to cost a lot more than internal construction is going to be with the ADUs. Most of our ADUs are just converting existing spaces, right,
Yeah.
Whitney? So we're not really getting new construction. So I think the idea of reducing fees and being more cost effective is better spent at the detached if that's something the city wants to do in year 4. And so we still keep 5 strategies, but they are significantly revamped. I always knew that we were a bit exploratory and didn't know exactly how we were going to broach some things when we first submitted to comply with the state. But it seems like getting more agencies involved at the state level, they're getting more and more disciplined, good or bad for Department of Workforce Services. They've been charged by the legislature to implement this. And so they're scrambling on their own. What do we do? If they were to come up with how they critique. There's no appeal process. That's been brought up this year, that if somebody at Workforce Services doesn't like the way you did it, then you don't have an appeal process. That's a red flag to everybody right now. But at the same time, there's discussion of let's not look to the state legislature to take 66 cities and just be rebellious, because we don't know what will happen out of that cause. And the most important thing, and it's a bit sad in some sense, but I think people will be more cautious and less exploratory because they need to preserve that access to transportation funds. So they're using that carrot of transportation funds to come into compliance, and he could be judged against losing those funds. And so maybe there's going to be a little bit of regression back in some of those strategies to make sure that you can comply with the state requirements based on wanting to have access to those transportation funds. Maybe an equal value of whether you're really worried about moderate income housing. So I think it exposes the problems, and I think the city manager's meeting with Utah League of Cities and Towns and Department of Workforce Services exposed that problem. And so it'll be interesting what the state legislature might do. On a side note, I sent all the commissioners what Bountiful's presentation was to the local legislatures.
I like that.
I thought that was a very interesting, you can start debating the data that they use, but they were using even some of the own Ivory Homes builders data. And I think the message is trying to be pushed back of saying cities maybe have been in the way in the past by doing 1 acre zoning and trying to not handle growth, which is really kind of bad in a sense. But I think the market and changes since then, since 2002 when this all started, cities are kind of handcuffed to just make the market change. And so I think it is going to become more and more of a partnership between private investment and local jurisdiction to do it. One unique thing, one last plug, our city council met with our local state legislature. I attended that meeting as a fly on the wall. And I think the message, at least from a council member, or maybe perceived from maybe a council member or two, was pushing it onto our backs without consideration of that we can't really make the changes. But an interesting comment came from Stuart Adams in that meeting saying, okay, I can kind of see where you're coming from, but from our perspective, we know you have constituents out there that are upset, with everything that's going on in the growth. And so we're trying to maybe look at it more as a partnership with the cities, where you can blame us because we're saying the cities have to do this instead of the cities, having to lead out and do it of themselves. I thought that was an interesting perspective. I'm not sure that I'm fully on board given all the information that I have participated in the last decade, because I feel some of the discussions has really been a push from the development community through the legislature to the cities. That's my more 10-year, decade experience in that. But, give some credit that if the state's going to really kind of revamp and do a good job, that, maybe it is the state legislature pushing and partnering with cities to help make things happen. So I thought it was a bit of a positive take, even though I'm not 100% on board. At least changed my perspective and go, well, there might be some room that the state legislature is trying to take it away from the locals and saying we're putting the pressure on. So
Well, and if you think of it in the fact that, putting it on just the cities, no one city is going to be like, we're going to lead this out. Or
we'll
what are they going
solve
to
it
do?
for the
They're going to solve it for the whole,
region.
region, no. So I think, it has to be a coordinated effort. And unless it's at a county level or a Wasatch Front level, legislative level is another level it could be.
So I hope the proposal will pass muster with the Planning Commission. I did send a recent email from Alyssa Gamble, who has been our contact with DWS, and she reviewed the current draft and said she believes that the current draft would meet muster with them.
So this draft.
This draft. Now, if you want changes or some other input, she'd be happy to quickly review those again, but the current draft would meet their expectations if that draft was acceptable.
Okay. Thanks, Corey. Just real quickly, well, that's okay. Why don't we just, does anybody have any questions for Corey about this before we proceed, and we'll have a discussion in a second?
Well, thanks for doing it. That was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And Corey had put a lot of effort, and good job for meeting with that gal to give her a proofread, and thank you. Because we thought we were good and we were not. So
We
that's
joined a lot of other cities in not
It's a
being
lot on your
good.
shoulders though, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Okay, so this matter has been scheduled for a public hearing. We will go ahead and, well, reopen the public hearing for this particular meeting. Invite anybody who'd like to speak to this to go ahead and do so. No, didn't think so. So we will close the public hearing. And back to the commission for questions or discussion. Really quickly, Corey, I do like what you've done here, especially where, you know, I think it's a little bit different approach than maybe we had thought, where, for example, 5B, Phase 1 doesn't start till 2025. Great, love it, you know, let's put that out there a little ways. 6B, the whole thing about accessory dwelling units, doesn't start till 2026. Great,
There was some strategic to not overload ourselves.
yeah.
And I'm hoping that there'll be some modifications as we go along at the state level.
Yeah, you know, personally, I don't, personally, I'm not a fan of external accessory dwelling units, but I'm in favor of putting that in here in the plan. Honestly, it's something that, as a planning commission for responsible planning, it's something that we should always be evaluating and considering, you know. So over the next few years, we should be doing this anyway, honestly. So to put it in writing that we're gonna do it, fine. Feel like we're already doing it, or we should already be doing it, so. I like the plan. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments, concerns?
I appreciate the implementation objective for the 2 to 5 years, all those, you know, showing that the 3 to 5 years, all those different things. I disagree. I would love to see us starting working sooner on some of these things because
Yeah, I can get that.
I like to recognize and plan for the future, and I also don't want us to be left with options that aren't actually like, I mean, specifically 5B talks about a joint acquisition agreement. If there are other political subdivisions that decide that they're gonna go into an acquisition, a joint agreement with someone else, and then 2025 we come around and we're like, hey, does anybody wanna partner with us? And they're like, oh, sorry, we've already got our buddies, you know, like, we've already taken care of this. To me, I feel like a little bit like, maybe that's, I mean, I definitely understand not trying to overload us too much in 1 year, and I think that's wise. But it's specifically that one I felt like, well, maybe that would actually hamper our ability to accomplish that one.
Yeah, but if other South Davis cities came and, or, you know, we're not gonna stick our head in the sand. If they start talking about, hey, we're gonna do this thing, and it'd be really great if all of us got involved on it, that doesn't mean that this couldn't,
Happen sooner.
yeah, be
That's true.
amended, this couldn't change.
True.
You know, I think the way that it's laid out is the stuff that we're gonna start working on right away is the stuff that, as a commission, we have been most supportive of jumping on and getting going.
Yeah.
And the stuff that's a little bit further down the road is maybe that stuff that we're like, yeah, this is the less preferred option, but let's do it, talk about it, or whatever else, and, yeah, so.
Yeah. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Great job.
But good point, too. I think we should keep our ears to the railroad track, and
Sure.
if somebody's talking about it, we could bump that up in
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And I really think that the other thing that I like about our elements that we've chosen, they feel pretty broad in that it's not just one path that we've chosen. We've chosen multiple paths that could prevent, you know, failure, I think, because we have lots of ways to kind of like, ooh, let's trust this, let's test this, let's see. And I think that's that's what I like about the plan as well, because it gives us opportunity to see, okay, is this working? We can pivot and go here, or just kind of have lots of options there.
Okay. Anybody else? Great.
We did talk about, I think it was, did we determine that everything is basically just responsible agency, city council? Like, we don't have any, we're not a responsible agency in any of these things? I remember we talked about that.
Yeah, we did, and I don't think it's so much that you're not responsible for them. I think as we have projects and things going forward, we'd bring them through the planning commission. I think really the responsible agency is saying, hey, somebody needs to talk about this officially. And, you know, when we're dealing with interlocal agreements with agencies, that's really a council kind of level. But I think I put the planning commission, didn't I put one on the planning commission for the ADUs? Or did I just say myself?
Yeah, I think just you.
We can
I
add,
mean,
we can add the planning commission into that.
I honestly think, I mean, I would like to see planning commission being listed on all of these. I think you're a responsible agency, if it's talking about housing, it's talking about planning, even if we are not making the ultimate decision, or we don't, you know, meet with the joint, house, like coalition with a joint thing, we are still talking about it, and we're still bringing it up to the council, and I don't know, I think there should be responsibility there too.
So to be fair, though, from a planning and zoning perspective, for example, a mortgage assistance program, that's financial in nature. And that's the city council's role, not our role. So are we inserting ourselves into something that's not our role?
Do you think this is inserting ourselves into
Well,
something
this
that's
is
not
part
our role?
of, this is part of the general plan for moderate income housing goals, but then the nitty gritty.
Right, I just think talking about it and being in there, I don't necessarily say that you're going to make a decision,
Right.
but he said bringing it up, you know, keeping that
I'm
going.
open to a friendly amendment to add planning commission to every one, because then that just means I can blame the commission in the annual report.
It means that it's part of
Not.
your responsibility, that all of a sudden we don't say, okay, we've sort of like pawned these off and now we don't talk about moderate income housing.
Yeah.
But that it's part of what we're talking about.
Definitely the commission should be listed in 6B.
I was gonna say, we can pick and choose and
That's
put the
what I was
ones that
kinda
apply.
Yeah.
Like the financing one, okay, maybe we don't need to be involved in that,
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying, though.
Like
is that
5A?
typically, typically, we don't get a say when it comes to budget and stuff. That's not our role. But, yeah, if we want to put us in there for some of these other ones, sure, let's do it.
Definitely should be in for 6B. That's just an oversight on mine.
Well, maybe not
6B looks
5A and maybe not 6A. But I think you could do 5B, 6B, and not 6C.
So 5B has to do with, to acquire property from moderate income housing.
But you're talking about an agreement with another subdivision to look around and say, okay, what is like property near us? What is property there? How would it affect, you know, I just think that one could definitely be something for the planning commission.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with that one. I think that whether or not that property ends up in Centerville or not, that's a different discussion. But if it does,
True.
then I think we'd want to be involved in that type of a conversation, right? So
As far as where would be appropriate.
where would be appropriate, yeah. So
So
5B,
5B and 6B, I'm hearing from the commission to add the commission in.
Any other thoughts down there?
yeah,
I agree with those.
let's do it.
I make an amendment to that? Do we have to make an amendment?
Well, we haven't made a motion yet. We don't have a
Okay.
motion on the table yet. So why don't you make a motion and include that?
Okay. I make a motion to accept the moderate income housing strategies and implementation benchmarks as outlined in the DWS non-compliance letter that are found in the staff report, plan elements 5A, 5B, 6A, 6B, and 6C with the amendment with adding, I guess, the planning commission as a responsible agency on 5B and 6B.
Second. Good motion.
Suggested reasons for action, because we're supposed to do it. Right? Like, because we're required
To be in compliance
do
with state
this.
statute.
Be in compliance.
State,
Suggest reason for action is to be in compliance with
state statute.
state statute. I
Okay.
guess.
Any further discussion to the motion? No? Okay. Let's start on that end down there.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye?
I
Aye.
Great. Motion passes. Thank you, Corey. All right, let's move on to the next one on the agenda. This is to talk about future planning goals. This is a discussion only. And I guess go back to Corey.
Thank you, Chair Daly, and I'm just trying to get there we go, popping up. So, at our last meeting, we discussed the beginning of the year and coming together. We've accomplished a number of goals the commission's had in the past. It's been a while since you've gone back and prioritized goals. And we also discussed the concept of meeting with the city council, because it's been a few years, 2 or 3 years since we've last met with the city council. I did bring that up with the city council in their past meeting. They were very supportive of having a work session of some type, some joint meeting, retreat, work session, whatever it may need to be to talk about planning and some goals. As you're aware, they have budgeted some money for some general plan amendments. We have put in some grants to try to get assistance to that, and we have failed for a second round of grants for that. That doesn't mean that we can't move forward. It just means that we have to regroup on what we're strategizing and doing. In talking with the city manager, we've had some pressure on the west side to change some of the PDOs. Some of the commercial properties and mixed-use development have not come to fruition. Example, Lot 2 and 3 south of the Megaplex. Then you have the Legacy Trails behind Maverick, where you have the 2 properties fronting the roundabout, haven't taken place. You have the northwest section of the parish in 1250, I don't know where 2000 came from, that long ago failed in securing a hotel, which it was the original condition that had to secure the hotel before implementing any other of the development of the property. So there's a number of pressures. There's actually 2 applications in to amend their PDO, and they're temporarily being placed on hold because some of the past discussions with the city manager is that we probably need to look at what the west side market, what do you call it, saturation or feasibility of what's happening on the side, because we're getting pressure for residential. Obviously, the need for housing has created that pressure. From my perspective, some of the pushback is that, and it showed up even in the report in Bountiful, is that we may reach a level where apartments, it might be a saturation level. And so some of my concerns raised with these property owners is, even though that might be a market demand right now and more successful than commercial, and their claim is that the commercial vacancy is up to 26%, and I don't disagree with that, but I would hate for us to build something that reaches a saturation point and missed out on some commercial that was originally planned to be part of that mixed use. And without understanding that, I would be hesitant to professionally stand up and say, yeah, go ahead with the residential because the commercial is not working. And then find out the next project, oh, we need some commercial space. You know, it just looks unprofessional when we don't have the data behind seeing where he's at. Now, that doesn't mean to say that the commercial might be viable in one spot, but might not be viable in another spot given its geographic location. You know, so there's that tension too. Is it in the right location to develop the commercial? And that's the problem with lots 2 and 3 of the south of the Megaplex.
Didn't
But-
we have something commercial that was going to go there?
Yes,
Yeah,
2 different
multiple
commercial,
times.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
like, multiple times.
two different times.
We approved all those.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's where that pressure sits. So the city manager indicated that maybe we should looking at the CDAs over the area. So we have the CDA for the Bernard Creek to the north. We have the CDA with the Megaplex and the trails, the Maverick. Maybe we need to approach the RDA and the city council, start talking about west side development. As you recall, some of you, the west side plan that looked more for a potential front-runner station failed to make it through to an adoption level, and there was a goal to come back to that, and we've never really gotten back to the west side and to solve that. And so down at our level, trying to do a whole general plan in one fell swoop is a pretty big task and can be fairly expensive. You know, we've seen prices levels anywhere from $100,000 to $130,000 to do those general plans, depending on what you're doing, depending on what you're acquiring, depending on how much public input and stretch that you're doing. Those are all factors on the deliverables and expectations, but it can be quite intensive. It can take some period of time. So we started discussing some in-house strategizing, and so you're seeing the memo that's written to you is beginning some of that strategy thinking of doing it in-house rather than creating a broad fell sweep correction. And we'll just go back in and start setting goals to fix this, and eventually get to a plan that's more holistic and not so far outdated. So that's why you see them listed. Right now, staff is supporting a west side plan start. If we move forward with that market analysis, that's where our growth, that's where some of our pressures are coming from that we see. Just recently, you have the double track study taking place with UTA. And our double track scenario we have south of Parrish is listed on that as part of the feasibility study. They're trying to increase frequency and the ability to make it quicker. And then there's discussion always of increasing the speeds from the 75 to the 125 mile an hour, which then you would have express times versus in between times to the station stop. So that plan is starting to kick off. And I just got notice from UTA for this month on the 17th, I think it is, I think it's the 17th. They are inviting the initial startup of the long-range UTA plan, including Front Runner. And
I keep talking with them every single time. I mean, I've gone to a couple of those things, and that last time I think I texted you all when it was the Wasatch Front, and I was the only one there. I was like, hello, Centerville, show up. Yeah. Luckily, Gina came. They just keep saying, like, there is no way to have a front-runner stop in Centerville. Yeah. They say that over and over, and I bring it up every single time just to see. And they're just saying with the train needing to get to a certain speed to make it viable from Farmington. And until they actually have like a full, he was saying a triple lane, not just a double lane, but a triple lane, then it's probably not even going to happen.
They do that, but what we're failing to respond to is whether we were a primary or we're an off-peak stop. Now, if you do an off-peak, let's just say that Woods Cross and Farmington are the primary. If you do an off-peak or off-primary hour stop, you can get one in Centerville on the double track.
Okay.
So it just depends on what you're doing. Now, right now, we don't have any long-range plans that fit into their mold to do that.
Right.
And so simply just asking for it based on that we'd like to have it, I think we have to have some deliverables that will cause them a change.
Do you think that
Now, whether we really want a station stop is really the big question in that, because we may not still want a station stop.
Do you think that would affect what they're doing with the interchange? You know, like their 2025 is going to be fixing Parrish Lane.
I don't think it'll change the diamond or the spooey design in it. The issue of if we want to integrate a station, it's where on the track line that they're going to be able to do the station. And we are severely hampering ourselves south of Parrish, as well as it's always been said by UTA, it needs to be north of Parrish for them to stop. Now, whether they do or not, front runner. But the reason I still bring that up is I've driven through the North Business Park. Just take time and drive through that North Business Park. It's underutilized, it's aging, it's deteriorating. Now, it would take some planning and leadership effort to reutilize that area and turn it into a stop, turn it into a TOD, turning it into where we could say 15% of your density is going to be moderate income housing based. But I don't know if the temperature of the community is there for that, because you'd have to deal with the landowners, you'd have to deal with an RDA in an urban renewal area, and you'd have to step out with city saying, this is our proactive planning because we want a front runner stop. And if you start proposing things like that, even on an off-peak, you're going to get some traction. But if you're just saying, we just want to stop with the as-is land uses, you're right, they'll skip us over. And this is part of that planning. I don't know if this community can tolerate that kind of aggressive plan.
Well, but at the same time, the property owners in that area would be more than happy to have their property utilized right now in that north business park, that northwest business park.
If you could change the value into the future for the sale of that property
I mean, that's a
with
utilization
development,
they'd
it would be
very
very
happy about.
attractive.
And especially if we've always talked about, what's gonna happen taking us over to Farmington in that regard. I think people would be extremely happy, so much is happening in Farmington, even just a connection there, instead of having to go back around this way back to there, just that little connection, I don't know.
And so I look at it just, and again, this is just my perspective, not knowing the temperature of the community. I've had a little glimmer because I've had two council members, former council members, tell me that the Village Center plan that was slated for Walmart that created such consternation in the prior to my tenure, so was that in that late 90s, early 2000s? I've had two of them at different meetings recently say, having that on the west side is so much better than here. And I'm like, it's not even the same plan. But to them, stacking that density is what they are okay with. So it seemingly, mental map is that if it's west of I-15, we're somewhat okay with what's going on there. Now, when we pushed on West Bountiful for next to their city, they
We're not.
found no tolerance for level, and the city found no tolerance to push that onto that neighbor from a political will standpoint. But I don't count it all out. If we were really wanting to try to look at redevelopment opportunities, you're looking at a diamond interchange, you're looking at investment in trails. We've got another trail now going to be built from Parish on 1250 West to the north, and a potential another one connection, I don't know why now, because they were so against it, going right underneath the Legacy interchange and accessing over the top of the guardrail.
Well, and they're gonna do that from, not Lund, what's the lane in Farmington, they're bringing us over west.
Yeah, but they're also proposing on the preliminary draft a pedestrian path from the community park over to 1275.
Yes.
We still have the Shorelands Commerce Park, which has been not explored sufficiently enough, but the county was interested in funding it last year, because we are in January, right? Last year, they were interested in funding it. We need to have some matching funds to it, because you're looking at $6 million, and we needed to come up with $250,000 to $300,000, depending on how the agreement worked in matching funds, which would be getting right-of-way and participation of property owners and all of that kind of information. So, from my viewpoint, you have redevelopment opportunities, you have wetland mitigations that need to take place, you have trail connections that are going to potentially take place. All of this stuff we're talking about is not on any of our plans.
Yeah.
Needs to get on our plan.
Yet we're kind
Because
of,
if it's on your plan, then you can charge impact fees for it, and
Yeah.
then you can
Yeah.
use it to get grants, and it has to get on plan first.
yeah, so we're pushing from behind instead of being forward in advance.
Are you putting, that West Centerville neighborhood plan, and you're including that entire, all the way to the northwest as well, the whole west?
Because we've wanted to it's 2010 since the Shorelands Commerce Park. We haven't got a road in. There's probably some shifts in the market that we can do in that area.
Yeah.
That one had some supportive residential that even some members on the commission were a little uncomfortable with because it was so far north that it seemed like anybody that built there would orient to Farmington High and Farmington City more than being engaged in the community here. So that was controversial as time went on. And so we've been long enough that we should reset that. If you look at the West Centerville plan, all that residential and mixed use was not in it. That was Band-Aided back into the plan as that development came on. And so from my standpoint, if you're going to capitalize on 20 years from now, the West Centerville Neighborhood Plan is probably your greatest return and opportunity, but it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of open houses and threats and data and information to help people understand and be convinced that these are good directions. And then, where do we go from there when we put in a plan? So again, I don't know what the temperature of the community is, but I think that West Centerville is a priority. That's why I've spent so much time talking about it. But I've got 3 pages of priorities to you.
Well, I
I was gonna
like,
say, you've made a good case for that one as a priority, so, yeah.
and I like what, Heidi says, if it's not in the plan, we're underutilizing the ability to charge impact fees, to have safeguards for long-term, so to me, I think that's pretty important too.
And then I think with the I-15, the West Centerville plan, we got to go back in and change our transportation element, bring that up to date with some of the RDA funding that was to be slated for the interchange areas that's not been identified, and we're coming up on reconstruction of the interchange, and we have some enhancements that are mentioned in our plan but not funded, and those enhancements will come from an RDA and CDA fund, so we need to update our transportation and circulation element from that standpoint to match what we're moving on with the I-15 corridor. Community facilities elements with these trails, these connections, we need additional urban pathways to make the connections from the foothills to the West Centerville area, and what are those kind of community things that we can do? How do we do pathway signing if we want to City Hall, to the museum, pathway signing to our job areas, pathway signing to our trails, and how do we make those urban connections to those? Because we have a few minor urban trails interior, but they're really not going anywhere right away. And so we can upgrade our community facilities element as part on that. Then I have the other one, South Main Street Corridor Plan. I think I've told you exactly where I'm at that. Completely confused. We have other various general plan elements, so once we start getting a picture of what we're trying to do with the other elements, we can go back into our residential and fix the language there. We also need to address how we handle densities in that residential element, because we're already shifting away from those density call-outs when we went and did the West Centerville Neighborhood Plan. If we're going to do some TOD development, if we're going to do some modern income housing incentive stuff, we need to shift our residential density listings, and where's the tolerance level with that. And then I put the Southwest Neighborhood Plan way back 6.5 years ago. The old Dick's Market was closing 7 years ago. The old Dick's Market was closing down. We went and quickly did that plan to try to address that, but there was some push to do the Southwest Plan because they were experiencing the stresses of Brighton's development, the townhomes, the lane, and some people were feeling that they're taking all of the density pressures into their community. We did not get back to that. Subdivision ordinance, state codes have changed, and we just need to get back to it. Then we have our, if we make these plans, then we got to change all the implementation. We've got to get into the zoning ordinance, do those kind of implementations. That's a big ball. I think that's going to be 2 years in-house to accomplish. I think that's aggressive, but I think 2 years. And then we have our minor planning, our CUP standards. A lot of people are taking them away because they have been so subjective, and frankly, some of ours is pretty subjective. State law's tightening that up. A lot of people there was a push 5 years ago to just cities get rid of your CUP process. I don't agree with that, but I might lose that argument. I think sometimes you're okay with projects, but you want to check the traffic.
Well,
You want to check the impacts, and you want them to mitigate it
CUPs are great if you utilize
correctly.
what can be utilized in that process.
Yes.
If you just feel like, oh, we have to do it because it's a CUP, I'm just gonna say yes, that doesn't help the city.
Right.
It's not a utilized tool, but if you use it as a tool that can actually, we were okay with this, and this allows us to have certain
Yeah, and I think there's reasons to have CUP, but we need to tighten that up so that they are not used. 'Cause like one example is let's take a look at the economics of the area and see if it's okay. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm going to put banks in a CUP and say we have enough banks because you've oversaturated this city. Fast food, we're overdone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I mean, the
that's
thing
not,
that's,
that's not a good standard to use.
you want to check the temperature of the city. I'll tell you this much, the temperature of the city is not for any more banks
Yeah.
in our city.
But maybe a fizz.
Another.
Another thing.
Another dream place.
Maybe that was too
Maybe another fancy. So I think we need to do that. The Parish Lane Gateway Standards was started by staff a few years back. There are some design parameters of concern there, but I can honestly tell you that the new development does not fully comply with the gateway standards. And so I feel professional, we're supposed to have an urban trail 10 feet behind the sidewalk so that you have no sidewalk out on the streets, running up and down Parish Lane. And we don't have any ability to connect it to the existing sidewalk systems. And we've used our flexibility for landscaping in the Parish Lane to avoid that standard. And then there are others that are concerned about the competing interest of you're using Cobra overheads, competing with pedestrian lighting, and the expense of the pedestrian lighting and the replacement of that lighting now that we own them is not necessarily justified. Then you have in the past, people have been struggling with the decorative aprons going across and the spalding and the re-damage of those that are now the city's costs to go in and replace those pedestrian pathways. So,
And alternately, people are also concerned with just having it look like a South Jordan
right.
exit,
Right.
and it doesn't have any kind of trees, any kind of like safety for pedestrians, any kind of something that sets it apart or makes our community feel really nice. So I hear you on that, but I also know maybe we're not hearing other people say, what the heck, why are we turning slowly, every little element is being pulled away,
Oh,
we're turning
I
into
agree with you. I
this-
think we should keep Parish Lane as gateway design. I just
No
think we need to
identifiers.
upgrade them so that we're not in violation. Because technically, some of them come back in, if you tried to be black and white in the ordinance and not use the waiver system, there's going to be a lot of people going to have to fix to come back into compliance with the ordinance. And I just think we can do better at that plan, because it was borrowed from West Jordan when it was adopted quickly for Walmart, and it was never thought of the language that's in there, like preserve corridor views to the mountains. I don't know what we're trying to accomplish in the Parish Lane Design Guidelines, preserving corridor views of the mountains.
Well, I mean, I would just say, yeah, maybe there needs to be some modifications, but I do think there needs to still have some standards.
Oh, I'm not trying to take it away. I just think we need to update it to better design expectations.
And I would be careful to just, modify it to fit what we have right now, because especially if we're looking
Not a
at,
standard.
no, it's not a standard, it's not a standard, and if we're looking at a redesign of the off-ramp going into Parish, we need to have some
No, I
solid
agree, but
stuff
so
in
here's one
place.
issue is you have a 30-foot urban trail, assuming 10 foot of right-of-way from Parish Lane and 20-foot setback. 10 foot doesn't exist on Parish Lane in the right-of-way. So, and basically, without the illustration, the Performing Arts Center should have had a 30-foot landscape out in front with the urban trail too. Now, they have some landscaping, and they did put in the lights as good neighbors to it, but you don't have Chick-fil-A doing that, you don't have In-N-Out Burger doing that, yet they're in the Parish Lane Design Guideline area.
Well, why didn't we require them to then?
There's no room to put it.
Well, anyway, what I'm saying is standards, even if we at some point did not follow some standards in approving some of these things, I think if we modify it, there still needs to be standards, especially looking ahead.
Oh,
to
I
what's
hope
gonna
you're not
happen.
saying I think it goes away. I think we need to update.
No, I think you leave it at a minimum where it is, because for one thing, we do have standards there. That's how we ended up with the best looking quick quack around.
Yeah, we do. I'm proud of that. Are you proud of that?
Yeah, it's a good looking.
I'm proud of
building,
that.
yeah. So, because we have standards, right? So you leave it alone at a minimum and then maybe just add as necessary or something.
Yeah, we just need some fixes because right now, we're not in compliance with our ordinance.
So some tweaks.
So we need some tweaks
So I
there.
guess we acknowledge we're not gonna be in full compliance with the ordinance. So, you know, we take the small wins we can, you know.
Yeah. No, yeah, we should preserve the design and probably better define our design with colors and materials too, because it just says harmonious. I don't know what that means anymore. So I think we need to fix that, but that's a lower priority. Foothills Management Plan tasks, I put undefined simply from the fact is we have tasks in there that we're supposed to accomplish. One of them spills over to this whole hillside things we're experiencing with people up in the hillside and they building more on their property than the 40%, and you've heard a couple of pressures that way. So the good is that we need to update our geologic hazard and hillside element. The bad news is it starts preparing us for the foothills, which we don't have to do because it's not in our annexation plan. But our foothills management is saying until these things happen, we're not interested. So it gets a little scary about
But
facilitating.
those things haven't happened.
Yeah, gets a little scary, so, and then the Northwest, I put in a plan task. I'm not sure it's relevant anymore, but the plan task still is to define and adopt a semi-rural residential of 5 acre lots or more.
Corey, here's a crazy question for you. Things like maybe the Foothills Management Plan, where did it go? Oh, it's under the major stuff. Community facilities element. Can we delegate some of that stuff? Could we say to the Trails Committee or to the Trail and is it the Parks and Rec Committee or whatever it's called? Hey, can you guys take a look at this and recommend it back?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, and I think some elements, particularly with the Trails Committee and Pathways, would be really good. They'll need a facilitator, though, as part of that. And so here's my strategy to talk with the budgeting session with the city this year. Is they've been kind enough for the last 2 years to fund. Went from 80,000 to 60,000 this past year for special planning projects. But I think instead of hiring an overall consultant to manage all of it, that's where we can use those monies to strategically hire professionals to assist. And so we could use the Trails Committee from the Planning Commission asking for assistance and delegation. And then the community development can use some professional funds to hire somebody to help them to do that specific task. Because alone to them without the staff report, basically I'm just going to jump over there and start doing that work with them, which I don't mind doing because I like job security, but we'll need some help from professionals to do specific things and spend $20,000 to do that.
I think that's a great idea because last year, we talked about coordinating with Trails. I think my entire tenure on this commission, I've been like, let's bring in the tree board, let's bring in the trails, let's bring in parks. We've wanted to do that, but I think having someone specifically to facilitate that relationship will help it be a lot more successful.
Yeah, and that's a good idea. That's a good point, Corey, because that's part of the reason, part of where I was going with that is like, I'm looking at this list and like you said, maybe it's 2 year worth of work for some of the stuff. The whole list, I think, there's no way.
Yeah, no, the whole list is dead weight.
Even if the planning commission decides to meet 4 times a month, but that doesn't help staff.
Right.
You guys are still super busy, so how do we maybe be more efficient about this stuff?
And so I think part of the goal session is, look, we've got a lot of work to do. We need some funding, and it'll be, instead of hiring one person to facilitate a whole general plan, I can function as that overall manager, facilitator in that. But now we get a professional that works with the trails and communities. Now we get a professional to help with the market analysis now, and we start divvying up the money that would go to a holistic general plan for professional services for different groups.
Do you think that will be financially feasible?
Yeah, I'm going to still, in my mind, ask for 80 to 100,000. I probably won't get it, but
Is that something?
Keep asking.
Do we run into I mean, do we hire somebody on contract so that they know that this is a 2-year contract and then you're done and you're out the door?
No, I think it's just
Or-
a scope and a fee.
Yeah, just scope and a fee for certain
Yeah.
select services, and then they go work with that group to get that done.
And then there's a couple presentations like to us, to the
Yep.
city council, included with a public input comment.
And then my job would be to take that study, that information, those conclusions, and craft them into the language of the general plan.
Cool.
Kind of like we did with the alternative transportation plan in 2018. That was funded. There's good stuff in there. It's just never been incorporated into our transportation element.
Great. So, Corey, in general, I am supportive of the priorities that you've identified here. I think those are, definite needs that we need to talk about. I look forward to a work session with the city council to further hammer out some of these details and plans and whatnot. And so, I don't know exactly what all you're looking for.
Just,
from us.
does this cover your aspect of goals? Do you have certain ones that are missing, that you think that are viable to add to it?
I think it'd be fun to look back and see what we accomplished this last year, to be like, hey, look at our goals, we did this, but you did that
Is that
on
coming
you
up?
did that on a regular basis.
I can bring that, I can provide that to you too.
I just think it's cool that I like.
You did a lot.
I like that you did that throughout the year, because we would review the goals, and I think that was helpful. And I think we did a good job last year.
You did, you accomplished most, the general plans that fell short, but the simple things like the truck ordinance, the single family, the parking.
Yeah.
We haven't fully resolved that yet. There's a commitment to resolve that.
We did our part.
We
Not our
have
fault.
done our part.
And they've recommitted to talk about that and carry it to its final version a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah, so.
So
with
if you
that
think
said-
this basically covers it, we can move forward with asking and requesting some type of retreat. And
Yeah.
I
So
just
unless-
want to get your list in place.
Right, so unless somebody feels really strongly about something that's missing from this list or a priority that you maybe disagree with on this list, I think that we would direct Corey to go back to the city council with this and plan a work session and we'll talk about this.
Sounds good to me.
Agreed.
Okay,
I would just say that in some of these, it's how the direction is facilitated to work towards these is important, I think.
yeah, yeah. Okay, let's move on then to the community development director's report. Corey?
Great, we have a meeting scheduled. We have, it looks like Summerhill Lane and their PDO amendments and eventually they're going to turn into plat amendments. They have some small properties changes and exchanges, but the boundaries were set under the PDO, so they have to come in, amend their PDO with those boundaries and handle some of the rezonings. And then if they move forward in a positive way, they also proceed to the city council for the plat amendments to handle that. So that is coming at your next meeting. We tentatively did Chase Creek subdivision on Chase Lane, about 224 West. They have some changes that they're trying to make, so we're still hit and miss if they'll be ready.
Ooh, what is it?
224 West?
224 West, north side.
To the corner?
No.
The what's
224.
224?
Where the horses are and
Between,
It's like right in the middle,
yeah,
Right in the middle.
literally, right in the middle.
Northwest on the middle.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Directly south
Um,
of
Not,
Kids Playground. and
okay, yeah,
Jenny Beach.
two. I was, for some reason, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
She's dialed in.
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
So they have some changes that they're talking about. We have kind of a deadline tomorrow afternoon if they can be on the agenda or not. So we have two items for you, and then we will get with you on the work session of the council.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks, Corey. All right, let's move on then to the last item on the agenda, which is the minutes for the last meeting, last month. Go through these fairly quickly. Does anybody have any recommended changes or comments on page 1? Page 2?
Nice short meeting.
It was good. Not as short as your meetings, but. All right. Anyone want to make a motion?
I motion to accept the minutes as
Unamended. I second that.
Great, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.